Welcome to the Surviving Retirement Podcast. This is our very first episode, so I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you get some value out of our conversation. I'm Peter Guidote, Chartered Accountant, Certified Financial Planner, and Senior Portfolio Manager. Retirement comes with many financial questions, and our goal is to provide clear, practical answers so you can plan with confidence. Alongside me, we have Danny, who will be leading this conversation and will ask me the questions that many retirees may have approaching retirement.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Before we start, I would like to assure our viewers that they are not alone in this. It's normal to feel uncertain and even nervous as we spent most of our lives preparing for this moment, and now we don't know what is ahead. This podcast will help you understand the key programs available to you and how to make the most of them.
Today, we are focusing on Canada's retirement income system. There are three main programs that provide retirement income in Canada. The first is the Canada Pension Plan, or CPP, which is a mandatory public pension that replaces a portion of your income in retirement. In Quebec, the Quebec Pension Plan, or QPP, serves the same purpose and operates separately from CPP. The second program is Old Age Security, or OAS, which is a government benefit available to most Canadians over the age of 65, regardless of their work history. And the third is the Guaranteed Income Supplement, or GIS, which provides additional financial support for lower-income seniors. To make the most of these programs, you need to answer some key questions. How much can you expect to receive from CPP or QPP? When should you start taking your pension? At 60, 65, or later? What are the key differences between CPP and QPP? How does OAS work, and when should you apply? Can you get GIS, and how does it affect your overall retirement income? By the end of this episode, you will have a clear understanding of these programs, the decisions you need to make, and how to ensure you are getting the most out of your retirement benefits.
All right, let's start with the basics. A lot of people know that CPP and QPP exist, but they might not understand exactly how it works. Can you break it down for us?
Of course. The Canada Pension Plan, or CPP, is a contributory pension plan. That means it is funded by you, the worker, and your employer. Every time you earn employment income, a portion of your paycheck goes towards CPP, and your employer matches that contribution. If you are self-employed, you pay both shares yourself. Now, when you retire, the amount you receive from CPP depends on two key factors. 1. How much you contributed over your working years. And 2. How long you contributed to the plan. If you had a long career with steady earnings and maxed out your contributions most years, you will get a higher pension. But if you had lower earnings or gaps in employment, your monthly payments will be lower.
So it is not like old age security where everyone gets the same amount?
Exactly. OAS is based on residency in Canada, but CPP is based on your earnings and contributions. That means two people retiring at the same time could get very different amounts from CPP, depending on their work history.
Got it. So how much are we actually talking about? What is the most someone can get?
Great question. The maximum CPP payout in 2025 for someone who starts at age 65 is about $1,433 per month. But most Canadians do not get the maximum because they have not contributed the full amount for at least 39 years. The average monthly CPP payment for new retirees is closer to $800 to $900. So while the maximum is useful to know, most people will get less than that.
That is a pretty big difference, so let's talk timing. When can people start collecting CPP?
You have three main choices. 1. Take it as early as 60, which reduces your payments. 2. Take it at 65, which is the standard age. Or 3. Delay it until age 70, which increases your payments. In Quebec, retirees can choose to delay to until 72, but we will talk about this a little later. If you start CPP at 60, your monthly payment is reduced by 36% compared to taking it at 65. That is because CPP assumes you will be collecting for a longer period. On the other hand, if you wait until 70, your payments will be 42% higher than if you had taken them at 65. That is a guaranteed increase, and for many people, it can make a big difference in long-term financial security.
So if you live a long time, delaying sounds like a pretty good deal.
Exactly. But of course, not everyone is in a position to wait. Some people need the money earlier due to health issues or financial circumstances. It is a personal decision, and that is why it is important to run the numbers before deciding.
That makes sense. Does all of this apply to QPP as well?
Yes, the Quebec Pension Plan is essentially the same type of program. It is funded by worker and employer contributions, and your payments depend on how much and how long you contributed. There are a few minor differences between CPP and QPP. We will discuss them in a minute. For today's discussion, we will mainly refer to CPP just to keep things simple, but if you live in Quebec, you should know that these rules and concepts apply to QPP.
Got it. So now that we understand how CPP works, what should people be thinking about before they decide when to take it?
That is the big question, and it depends on a few key factors: your life expectancy, your other sources of income, and whether you need the money right away or can afford to wait. We actually have a whole series of videos on our YouTube channel dedicated to making better CPP or QPP claiming decisions. For anyone interested, we will have a link to that playlist in the description.
Right, so let's say we have two different people trying to decide when to take CPP. One person is in great health, comes from a family where people tend to live into their 90s, and they have a solid RRSP and some rental income. The other person, let's say, has some health issues, doesn't expect to live as long, and doesn't have much in savings outside of CPP and OAS. For the first person, it sounds like delaying CPP to 70 might make a lot of sense, since they could end up collecting a much larger amount over a longer period. But for the second person, taking it at 60 could be the better option because they need the money sooner, and they might not benefit as much from waiting.
That is exactly the kind of thinking that needs to go into this decision. The key is to look at your personal situation, your health, your financial picture, and your lifestyle goals, so that you are making the choice that gives you the best long-term outcome.
Right, that makes sense. So you briefly mentioned the QPP for Quebec residents. How exactly is QPP different from CPP?
Well, the Canada Pension Plan, or CPP, is available to most workers across Canada, except in Quebec, which has its own pension plan. The two systems are very similar because they were designed to work in parallel. Both are funded by contributions from workers and employers, and both provide retirement, disability, and survivor benefits.
So, if they're almost the same, why does Quebec have its own version?
It comes down to how pensions are managed in Canada. When CPP was established in 1965, Quebec chose to run its own separate system. So, while the rest of Canada is covered by CPP, workers in Quebec contribute to QPP instead. The main difference is that CPP is administered by the federal government, while QPP is managed by Retraite Quebec, the provincial agency responsible for pension benefits in Quebec.
Got it, but does that mean the payouts are different too?
The payout structure is nearly identical, but there are slight variations in how benefits are calculated. Over the years, Quebec has made adjustments to QPP that don't always match the changes made to CPP. That means contribution rates, benefit formulas, and some of the rules around disability and survivor benefits can differ slightly. However, for most people, the differences aren't huge, and both programs ultimately serve the same purpose: providing retirement income that lasts for life.
So, if someone worked in both Quebec and another province, how would that work? Would they have both CPP and QPP?
The two plans are designed to be fully transferable. If someone worked in Quebec for part of their career and then moved to another province, their QPP contributions would be combined with their CPP contributions. When they retire, they'll receive a single pension based on their total contributions to both plans. The same applies if someone moves from another province to Quebec. They will receive the pension of the province they decide to retire in, so no one gets left out, and there's no penalty for working in different parts of Canada. But it's a very good thing you brought this up, since a common question we get is if someone can receive both CPP and QPP. And the answer is no, it's one or the other.
That's good to know. So are there any other differences other than the way they are managed?
Well, there were some significant updates to QPP as of January 1st, 2024. One of the biggest changes is that Quebecers can now defer their QPP benefits until age 72. Previously, the latest you could delay was age 70, just like CPP. This extension gives retirees more flexibility in planning their income.
That's interesting. Why would someone choose to wait until 72?
The main reason is that delaying your pension increases the amount you receive. If you wait until 72, your QPP benefit can be increased by 58.8% as opposed to 42% at age 70. So for someone who doesn't need the money right away and has other sources of income, waiting could mean a significantly higher payout for life.
Wow, that's a huge difference. Were there any other changes?
There's also a proposed change that could benefit seniors with disabilities. The Quebec government is considering allowing individuals with disabilities to receive their full QPP benefit at age 65, even if they started collecting a reduced pension at age 60. This would help those who may have retired early due to a disability, but later found themselves in financial difficulty.
That sounds like a really positive change for people who need it.
Absolutely. These updates are all about giving retirees more options and flexibility in how they plan their income. And for anyone in Quebec, it's important to stay informed about these changes because they could make a big difference in retirement planning.
You're very right about staying informed. It feels like there are so many things to know, yet the information is not readily available. And I suppose this is a good time to ask our listeners to consider subscribing to the channel. So if you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, and you find this information useful, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to not miss any podcast episodes. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about OAS, or Old Age Security. It sounds like it works differently from both of those programs. So, Peter, how exactly does OAS work?
Right. So OAS is a bit different because it's not based on your work history. Instead, it's based on your residency in Canada. To qualify for the full OAS benefit, you need to have lived in Canada for at least 40 years after the age of 18. That's a pretty big factor in determining how much you'll receive.
So if you don't have 40 years, does that mean you get nothing?
No, you can still get partial benefits if you've lived in Canada for fewer than 40 years. The amount of OAS you receive is prorated based on how long you've lived here. For example, if you've lived in Canada for 30 years, you'll receive 75% of the full OAS amount. For 20 years, it would be half of the amount.
Got it. And when do people start receiving it?
You're eligible to start receiving it at 65, but you can also delay it up to age 70. And just like CPP and QPP, the longer you wait, the more you can receive each month. The increase is about 0.6% per month for every month you delay. So if you wait until 70, you could get 36% more than if you started at 65. However, in contrast to the CPP and QPP, you cannot take OAS early. It's either at the base amount at 65 or later for a bigger amount.
Okay, but that's a lot to keep track of. Are there any other things people should know about OAS?
Yes, there's one big factor to consider. High earners could face an OAS clawback, which is essentially a tax on their OAS benefits. We also refer to it as the recovery tax. If your income is above a certain threshold, around $93,000 in 2025, your OAS payments will start to be reduced, and it will eventually be completely clawed back if your income reaches a certain threshold. Around $151,000 for individuals under 75, and $157,000 for those 75 or older.
So if you're a high earner, you might not get the full OAS benefit?
Exactly. The clawback is gradual, meaning for every dollar you earn over that threshold, your OAS benefit will be reduced by 15 cents. If your income is significantly higher, you might end up with no OAS at all.
Wow, I can see how that could be important to keep in mind for people with higher incomes. So it's not just about how long you've lived in Canada, but also how much you're making?
Yes, it's a good reminder to understand all the factors that influence your OAS benefits, especially if you're a high earner, so you can make better decisions about your retirement planning. Of course, there are strategies to reduce your taxable income to benefit from OAS more, but they would be too complex to talk about in this podcast. So, I would encourage our listeners to talk to their advisor or tax professional, or consider booking a free 30-minute meeting with a member of our team. The link will be below and is available to everyone.
That indeed sounds complicated, and the role of a professional is crucial. Now, we've covered CPP, QPP, and OAS, but what about GIS? How does that work, and how do people qualify for it?
GIS, or the Guaranteed Income Supplement, is specifically designed to help low-income seniors. To qualify for GIS, you have to be receiving OAS, as it's considered a supplement to that.
So, if someone is receiving OAS but still have a low overall income, GIS would help fill the gap?
Exactly. The amount you can receive from GIS depends on your income and whether you're single or married. If you're a single person with a low income, you could receive the full GIS benefit, but if you have a partner or a higher income, the amount you get could be reduced.
Right. So, what are the specific qualifications for GIS? How does someone know if they're eligible?
Well, to qualify for the Guaranteed Income Supplement, you need to meet a few key requirements. First, you need to be 65 or older and live in Canada. Of course, you also need to be receiving the Old Age Security pension. Then, your income must be below certain thresholds to qualify for GIS. If you're single, widowed, or divorced, your income needs to be below $22,056. If you have a spouse or common law partner, there are different thresholds depending on their situation. If your spouse or common law partner receives the full OAS pension, your combined income must be below $29,136. If your spouse doesn't receive OAS, the combined income limit is $52,848. And if your spouse receives the allowance, your combined income must be under $40,800.
That's helpful. So it's really about your income, and if you're in a couple, your combined income?
Yes, exactly. And there's also something called the allowance for spouses or common law partners who are between 60 and 64 years old, since they would not be old enough to receive OAS. If you qualify for GIS, your spouse or common law partner may be able to receive the allowance if your combined income is below a certain threshold. If your spouse or common law partner has passed away, they may qualify for the allowance for the survivor, which is similar, but specifically for those 60 to 64 who have lost a partner. It's important to know these options and check eligibility, because every little bit helps when it comes to retirement income.
And is there a way to check how much someone could be eligible to receive from GIS?
Well, there's actually a calculator that people can use to estimate their eligibility for CPP, OAS, and GIS benefits. It helps you understand how much you could be entitled to based on your personal situation. If you're already enrolled for OAS, you may also be automatically enrolled for the GIS, depending on your income level. However, if you haven't been automatically enrolled, you can still apply for GIS by filling out an application on the Service Canada website. It's important to remember that to continue receiving both OAS and GIS, you must file your tax return every year on time. This ensures that your income is properly reported and your eligibility for GIS is accurately assessed.
Okay, Peter, we've covered a lot of important details today, but let's talk about something that can make or break your retirement. Mistakes. What do you think are the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to these retirement benefits?
Yeah, there are a few big ones, Danny. I'd say the first mistake I see a lot is not knowing when to take CPP. If you take it too early, you're locking in a reduced benefit for life, but if you wait too long, you might be delaying something you actually need. It really depends on your own situation, like your health, life expectancy, and your other sources of income.
Right? And it's not just about what you need at the moment, it's about the long-term picture, huh?
Exactly. And another mistake people make, it's kind of related to that, is underestimating the OAS clawback. If you're a high-income retiree, the OAS recovery tax can really eat into those benefits. It's something a lot of people don't realize until it's too late. They think they'll get the full OAS no matter what, but that's just not the case. Another big issue is not thinking about the tax implications of all these benefits. Some people forget to factor that into their planning, and it can lead to surprises down the road. Taxes on your retirement income can really add up, especially if you're not prepared for them.
Yeah, I can imagine. So if you're not planning ahead, you could find yourself with less money than expected and more taxes.
Definitely. That's why planning ahead is so important. I mean, Danny, even if you think you understand how all this works, it's easy to miss something or overlook the details. It's always a good idea to get professional advice and make sure you're on track. Retirement planning isn't just about how much you save, but how you manage it when the time comes.
So it's all about being proactive and thinking through all the angles, right?
Yes. Don't wait until you're in retirement to start making these decisions. Get ahead of it and plan so you can enjoy the benefits without any surprises.
Wow, Peter, this has been really interesting. I had no idea there were this many things to consider when it comes to CPP, OAS, and GIS. It's definitely not as simple as just applying when you turn 60 or 65.
Yeah, and we've just scratched the surface. There are so many mistakes people can make when planning for retirement that we could probably dedicate an entire episode just to that.
You know what? That actually sounds like a great idea. A deep dive into the most common mistakes and how to avoid them. I think a lot of people would find that really helpful.
Absolutely. And that's why if you have questions or want to make sure you're on the right track, we're offering a free 30-minute consultation. Just click the link in the description to book a time.
Yeah, if you've been listening and thinking about sorting out your retirement plan, now's the time to take action. And while you're at it, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media for more retirement insights.
That's right. We've got more episodes coming your way, so stay tuned. And remember, be kind to yourself and to others, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening.